I chose a raw food lifestyle a little over 8 years ago now. I used to be nearly 300 pounds, morbidly obese, always ill, miserable, lonely, not a pretty picture. And somebody introduced me to raw foods in May 2002 through a book called Raw Family by the Botenkos. I started to read that book and I couldn't stop. I got hugely inspired. I read the whole book in one night and I chose a raw lifestyle the next day. In the first year of my raw food journey, I released 105 pounds. And within 2 years, about 160 pounds was gone and has stayed off ever since. So it's been an enormous time of transformation for me, not just on that physical level, but in every way imaginable. I had no idea all of the things that were going to unfold just from the beginnings of that physical shift, emotionally, socially, psychologically, mentally, spiritually. I mean, my life has just changed in so many ways. It's pretty much unrecognizable these days from how it was 8 or 9 years ago. And I feel incredibly grateful. I love the life I live now. I am probably one of the healthiest people I know. I'm living in a place and with a person who I completely love. And I feel like things just keep getting better and better. So I feel extremely grateful for the pathway that raw food kind of opened up for me in life. It was like the stepping stone to a much more enjoyable reality for me. Is the raw food diet applicable for all overweight people, and what are the key points to consider? All right. Well, I would say that this lifestyle, I consider it a lifestyle and not a diet. Because diets are something that people usually go on because they're going to go off it again at some point, which is not something that, to me, is to be encouraged. You know, I don't really enjoy seeing people going into those yo-yo patterns. I like to think of this as a lifestyle, and the question of whether it's applicable for all overweight people is a very complex one as far as I can see, because it's not just about calories in, calories out. You know, it's not just about the sheer fact of which foods might physically be the healthiest for us. You know, people are very emotionally connected to food usually, and socially connected, and it goes way beyond just what they choose. So if somebody is morbidly obese, like I was, or they're overweight, my feeling is that in terms of the physical fuel they could be putting into their body, there's no healthier choice, as far as I can see, that they could be making than eating raw. That goes for anybody, whether they're overweight or not. As far as I can see, eating raw is the healthiest thing for a human body, just as all animals in the wild eat raw food. You don't see zebras eating pasta and giraffes eating hamburgers, you know. So from that point of view, from the kind of logical point of view, then yeah, I feel like eating raw is what makes sense for everybody, but it's so much more complex than that because of the point that we've come to in our history. So the other part of that question was, what are the key points to consider, I guess, for someone who maybe is overweight or obese and is wanting to maybe choose this path? What are the key points to consider? I always encourage people to take it slowly in the beginning, because what we see happen over and over again is people find out about raw food, they get super excited about it, and then, you know, they jump in maybe 100% raw straight off the bat, and it's often way too much for them way too soon. And 2 or 3 months down the line, you never hear from them again. And for me, that's kind of sad when I see that happen. You know, I would much rather see somebody start out eating at least 50% raw and just take it from there. You know, take it slowly, baby steps. Help yourself to make the transition to this new way of life. It really is such a dramatically different way of life for most people than what they're used to. So be gentle with yourself, you know, get support from other people who've maybe been down this path before you. There are lots of raw food potlucks out there these days and amazing websites to connect with other people who are interested in this. We have so many resources these days compared to, you know, even 5 or 10 years ago. We are really, really blessed. So reach out to others. It's easy to feel awkward when you're stepping onto this path. I definitely experienced that firsthand, you know, coming from a background of morbid obesity in this nearly 300-pound body, suddenly starting to eat raw food is a pretty huge shift. And for the people around me, it was very odd. You know, they were used to seeing me eat plate after plate of pasta and pizza and all these things, and suddenly I was there with celery sticks and raisins. You know, they didn't know what was happening, and there was a lot of teasing, so it's easy to feel awkward. So reach out to others, take it slowly, learn a few recipes that you enjoy, maybe a green smoothie. Greens are the key. Green leafy vegetables are where it's at for being healthy as a raw foodist. Keep that in mind every day, to drink at least one green drink a day, and you'll be having like a good foundation for health. That green drink might be a green vegetable juice, it might be a green smoothie, so you're blending together fruits and leafy greens. There's some great websites out there for raw food recipes these days, so, you know, Google around, poke around on the internet, see what you can find. Find inspiration and keep yourself going on the path. I know that some people cannot properly digest raw food and prefer cooked food and starches. What would you advise these people? Right, that's another part of the complexity of whether raw food is appropriate for everybody right now, immediately. The point that we've come to, a lot of us have very low hydrochloric acid. We have approximately 7 generations or so now of people eating very processed foods in the kind of Western cultures. You know, so our bodies have adapted to some degree to these very starchy foods and handling all of these kind of processed things, and some people really struggle to go from that kind of background into eating primarily raw, even if, you know, logically, if we look around in nature, what are all the animals in nature eating? Well, what does a gorilla eat? What does an ox eat? What does a cow eat? These massive, healthy, strong, muscly animals, they primarily eat greens, you know? So even if that might be the background that we came from at some point, primarily eating greens and wild foods and maybe some berries and fruits, depending on where we were, for many of us, that's a challenge now. So if somebody finds they're in that situation and they do want to eat more raw food, you know, that's always a choice. It's not a competition. You don't have to eat this way. Things that might be useful for somebody in that situation would be to intake raw food in forms that are really easy to digest. So juices, for example, that's going to be a great example, because if you make sure there's no fiber in the juice, it's literally like instantly absorbable into the body. Through the stomach, it will just go straight into all the tissues of your body, into your bloodstream. Smoothies are another pretty easy way for people to get stuff into their bodies in a way that's kind of like pre-digested. You know, it's kind of like the blender has done the work for you. Most people these days do not chew their food anywhere near as much as might be optimal.